The alarm on my scanner screamed before I even saw the wreck, and my hands were shaking as I steered my small salvage ship toward the broken hull spinning in the dark. Something inside that ship was still alive. I could feel it in the way my instruments spiked, a heartbeat signal flickering weak and desperate against a field of dead metal and frozen debris. My name is Daniel Voss, and back then I was nobody. Just a scavenger picking through the bones of ships nobody wanted, trying to make enough credits to keep my own vessel fueled for another month. I had no family, no crew, no reason to risk my neck for a wreck that wasn't mine. But that heartbeat signal wouldn't let me go. I docked my ship against the broken hull, sealed my suit, and cut through the twisted metal with a plasma torch that was older than I was. The inside of the ship was silent except for the hiss of dying life support. Bodies were everywhere, alien bodies, a species I didn't recognize, their armor scorched and their ship torn apart by something powerful. Whatever had happened here, it happened fast, and it happened recently. Then I found the pod. It was tucked into a reinforced chamber at the back of the ship, still humming with power when everything else had gone dark. Through the frosted glass, I saw them. 2 infants, wrapped together, their skin a pale shade of blue, their eyes closed, their small chests rising and falling in perfect rhythm with each other. Twins, the only living things left on that entire ship. I didn't think, I just acted. I pulled the pod loose, dragged it through the wreckage, and got it aboard my ship before the whole structure lost pressure completely. When I finally sat down in my cockpit, hands trembling, staring at those 2 small faces through the glass, I understood that my life had just changed forever. I never learned their true names. I never even learned what their species was called, because every record on that wreck had been destroyed, so I gave them names of my own. I called the girl Wren, because even as an infant she watched everything with sharp, calculating eyes, like a bird studying the ground before it strikes. I called the boy Corin, because he was still and quiet, always alert, always watching the door, even when he was too young to understand what a door was for. Raising them wasn't easy. I wasn't built for it, and my ship certainly wasn't built for children. I sold my old scavenging routes and settled on a quiet moon at the edge of human territory, far from anyone who might ask questions about 2 alien children living with a lone human man. I learned to feed them, to comfort them, to teach them the only language I knew. They grew fast, faster than human children, and by the time they were 5, I already knew they were special. Wren could read a room of adults and know exactly what each person wanted before they said a word. Corin could sense danger before it arrived, standing quietly by the window, hours before a storm ever touched our moon. I taught them everything I could. Patience, kindness, when to fight for something and when to walk away from it. I never once thought I was preparing them for anything bigger than a simple, quiet life. I just wanted them safe. But safety never lasts long for children like them. When they were 12, patrol ships from an empire I had never heard of found traces of their species near our system. I hid them as long as I could, moved us twice, changed our names, but eventually a diplomatic envoy arrived at my door with proof of their heritage and a request I could not refuse. Their people had been searching for surviving royal bloodlines for over a decade. Wren and Corin were not ordinary children. They were heirs to a throne that had been torn apart by war before I ever found their wreck floating in the dark. I remember the day they left. Wren hugged me and told me she would remember everything I taught her. Corin didn't say anything. He just stood at the door of the shuttle and watched me the same way he used to watch our window, like he was memorizing every detail so he would never forget it. Then they were gone, and I was alone again, older, quieter, and certain I would never see them again. Years passed. I stopped scavenging and took a small job maintaining agricultural drones on the same quiet moon where I had raised them. Life became simple, predictable. I told myself that was enough. Then one afternoon, the sky changed color. I stepped outside my small home and saw them. Dozens of massive ships descending through the clouds, their hulls gleaming with a design I hadn't seen in years but recognized instantly. My hands went cold. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it in my ears. I didn't know if this was a rescue, an invasion, or something else entirely, but I knew, somehow, that it was them. A single shuttle broke away from the fleet and landed in the field behind my house, crushing the crops I had spent months growing. I didn't care. I stood frozen as the shuttle door opened and a woman stepped out wearing robes stitched with silver thread, a crown resting on her head like it had always belonged there. Her eyes found mine instantly, sharp, calculating, and full of an emotion I hadn't seen since she was a child. It was Wren. Behind her stepped a man in dark battle armor, scarred and weathered, his eyes scanning the field, the tree line, my house, every possible angle of danger. before finally settling on me. It was Corin, taller than I remembered, stronger, carrying himself like someone who had commanded fleets and led soldiers through impossible battles. Neither of them said anything at first. We simply stood there, three people connected by a choice I made decades ago in the wreckage of a dying ship. Then Ren stepped forward and did something I never expected from a queen. She hugged me exactly the way she used to when she was small, and for a moment she wasn't royalty at all. She was just my daughter, home again. Corin placed a hand on my shoulder, firm and steady, the same way he used to stand guard by our window. Neither of us needed words. We understood each other the way we always had. Once we were inside my small home, sitting around the same worn table where I used to feed them as children, they finally explained why they had come. Their empire, the one they had spent years rebuilding from ashes, was under threat again. The same enemy that destroyed their original ship all those years ago had resurfaced, stronger and more dangerous, expanding through nearby systems with terrifying speed. And now, that same threat had turned its attention toward human territory, toward the very moon I called home. Ren explained how she had spent years navigating political conflict within her empire, uniting fractured territories through negotiation and careful strategy, becoming a queen respected not for her power alone, but for her wisdom. Corin explained how he had built an entire military force from nothing, training soldiers, leading them through countless dangerous missions, becoming a commander known for protecting those he served, rather than seeking glory for himself. Listening to them, I realized something incredible. Everything they had built, everything they had become, traced back to lessons I had taught them without even realizing their importance. Patience during difficult negotiations, loyalty during moments of doubt, courage without cruelty. I had simply been trying to raise two frightened children the best way I knew how, and somehow, that had shaped two of the most powerful leaders in their entire empire. They hadn't come back merely to reminisce. They had come to protect me, and by extension, to protect every human world within reach of the coming danger. Ren offered an alliance between her empire and humanity, promising resources, technology, and protection in exchange for cooperation. Corin offered something even more direct, positioning his fleet to defend key human settlements immediately, starting with the very moon where he grew up. I sat there, overwhelmed, staring at these two extraordinary people who had once been small, frightened infants in a stasis pod. I had saved them once, without any expectation of return. Now they were prepared to save an entire species because of the years we spent together. Word spread quickly across human territory about the alliance forming, about a queen and a war commander with mysterious human ties, and about the small moon that had somehow become the center of an unprecedented partnership between species. Leaders from various human colonies arrived to negotiate terms, but Ren and Corin insisted on including me in every major discussion, refusing to finalize any agreement without my presence at the table. A simple farmer turned reluctant diplomat. As days turned into weeks, I watched as fleets aligned, resources exchanged hands, and defensive strategies took shape, all guided by two leaders who never forgot where they came from. Despite their titles, despite their armies, despite their thrones, Ren and Corin always returned to my small home each evening, sitting at that same worn table, sharing simple meals and quiet conversation like the family we had always been. The threat approaching human space was real, dangerous, and growing. But for the first time since I found that stasis pod drifting in the wreckage, I wasn't afraid. I had two children who had grown into extraordinary leaders, standing beside humanity when it needed them most, not out of obligation, but out of genuine loyalty forged through years of simple kindness. I never expected saving two abandoned infants would one day determine the fate of entire civilizations. I never expected a lonely scavenger like me would become the reason a queen and a war commander chose to protect an entire species they were never originally born into. But sitting at that table, watching my children lead with wisdom and strength, I understood something profound. Sometimes the smallest acts of kindness ripple further than we could ever imagine, reaching across galaxies, shaping destinies, and proving that family isn't always defined by blood, but by the choices we make when no one else is willing to make them.